Hey, Hawkeye fans, Chad Leistikow and Tyler Tachman of the Des Moines Register. Our first post-game podcast of the 2024 Hawkeye football season is going to be about a 40-0 win, Tyler, in which the Iowa offense exploded for 492 yards, the most yards in a game by the Hawkeyes since Middle Tennessee State in 2019. So that's 5 years if you're doing the math at home. That's a long time. We haven't seen an offensive explosion like this, yet it didn't feel like that for quite a while. And so it was an interesting game to process, to talk about, to think about, to talk to the players about. What is your initial reaction to this 40-0 win, Tyler?
You're watching the first half and I know there's probably a pit in people's stomachs like, oh, this doesn't look good. This looks very all too familiar. And then the second half came and it just felt like the offense was kind of Cade McNamara just kind of working through the growing pains of coming back from two major injuries, really, right in front of our eyes. And he just looked so much more comfortable. So did the offense. And then when they got rolling, I mean, there was 6 possessions. In 5 of the 6, Iowa scored a touchdown on. Just got into a really good rhythm. A great debut for Tim Lester, new offensive coordinator. It just felt like a lot of the kind of tension at Kinnick, which is building up over that first half, was kind of released once Iowa started getting in a rhythm. And Cade McNamara looked really good. He looked like he was moving around well. He made some really good plays. Reese Vanderzee, I'm sure we'll get to him a little bit, but what a debut for a true freshman. And Caleb Johnson in the second half. There's just a lot of really positive things to look at, reasons to kind of be excited about what Iowa did. And I think, kind of circling the question of like, well, what does Iowa look like if it has a competent offense, if it has an
Right.
offense that can do some damage? Like, there's obviously still a long way to go to have this be a consistent thing, but this was, kind of just tangible evidence of what it can look like when you have all three facets of the game working together.
Yeah, that's exactly what Seth Wallace told his team in the video they posted from the locker room afterwards. He's like, this is just a little microcosm of what is possible when this team plays, as you asked Seth Wallace about complementary football. And I think what happened in the first half was an offense that was obviously rusty. It wasn't ready for prime time in the first quarter for whatever reason. Cade McNamara was throwing off his back foot. He was 3 for 18 for 17 yards. They were 3 and out, 3 and out. I think they had 1 first down in the first 4 possessions. The defense got them great field position. They only cashed in 3 points off of those 2 early turnovers in the first quarter. So it was just like, here we go again. The old, you got to rely on the defense to score. And then it just seemed like things started clicking. And I think what I saw, and I'm curious to watch it on the replay, but it just seemed like once Iowa finally, I think Tim Lester was trying to figure out, I think he wanted to run the ball a lot today. I think that's what he came into wanting to do. But they realized that Illinois State was just attacking that. And it seemed like to me, once Cade McNamara just got his feet under him and started slinging the ball to Luke Lachey and Reese Vanderzee, for example. But Luke Lachey in particular, I felt like that just got him going. Once he kind of got some comfort, and then he just started looking better and better as the game went on. And that's exactly what you want to see if you're thinking about this Cade McNamara season. Like if he can be, we knew it wasn't going to be perfect out of the gate, but he was just about perfect in the second half, 13 for 14 in the second half with 3 touchdown passes. The only incompletion was a drop by Jarrett Bowie. I mean, that's pretty darn good. It was just as I wrote in my column, Tyler, it was just kind of like a little bit of a microcosm of a fall camp because started slow, but incrementally got better and better. And then you could see the potential by the end of the game, which of course was the third quarter, fourth quarter.
Well, part of the issue early on was that Illinois State was just stacking the box and basically daring Iowa to throw the ball, which is the same issue that Iowa ran into last season when Deacon Hill was back there, and that there was basically just no threat at all to throw. Then when you kind of started letting Cade McNamara get loose, you see how that just opened up everything, right? Caleb Johnson with some big holes, and then you just feel like the offense is really kind of getting in rhythm. And one of the things that Cade McNamara mentioned after the game was that when they made a mistake, he felt like when they were playing better, when they made a mistake, they just flushed it and moved on. And I felt like that was a really good representation of just like how much being a good offense is mental, especially for this Iowa team because of all the toxicity around the offense in the last few seasons, all the struggles. They literally just need to focus on the present. If something went wrong, you move on, you move to the next play, you focus on that. Because if Iowa gets too stuck up in, well, what was the offense last season and what was it 2 seasons ago, and can we kind of break free of this narrative? Then that's where you start to get in trouble. But it just seemed like when Iowa, like Cade McNamara said, when they just moved on to the next play, learned from the mistake, that's when things started really to get rolling. And Reese Vanderzee, look, I mean, we heard a little bit about him during fall camp, but he just seems like the type of guy that Iowa's needed in terms of you can just throw the ball up and he can go make a play. That's what Iowa has lacked at receiver. And then you add a guy like Luke Lachey in there. There are some guys that are potential playmakers on the roster. And going back to Cade McNamara, I mean, early, he missed Reese Vanderzee on that one. It was just a wide open pass. He also underthrew Luke Lachey, which on what could have been a touchdown. But you compare in large part what Cade did this first game to last season when against Utah State, like it was just night and day. And when you look at the progress that Cade made from quarter one to quarter four, like it was like kind of watching someone grow up like right before our eyes in the matter of just a few quarters, because you kind of saw the rawness in the first quarter, and then to the fourth quarter he looked like the guy that you want to see. He was the quarterback that Iowa needs and plenty more.
Speaking of playmakers and Cade McNamara, I just tweeted this from Cody Hills. It was the play I wrote about to lead my column from the game today, which was the throw to Zach Ortworth to end the third quarter, I believe. I think it was the last play of the third quarter. I'm just watching it right now. So he gets the shotgun snap, immediate pressure. And then he ducks out of it. Somehow he sidesteps the pressure almost immediately, and then sidesteps another guy. Like he literally had like no blocking right up the middle. He got out of it, rolled to his left, and then made a kind of an acrobatic throw down the field to an improvising Zach Ortworth. And I called this backyard football in my column because he just made a play out of nothing. And like, I did ask him this after the game. I said, could you have made that play last year? And he's like, no. He's like he could not. Last year he was just going down to take the sack because of his quad injury. He couldn't even do a quarterback sneak last year because of the quad injury. So we just haven't seen Cade at this level. And I think that's why Cade was like as jovial and happy as I've seen him since he's been with the Hawkeyes, wasn't he? I mean, he was just like really happy and upbeat after the game. And I think it was just like that feeling of, when he told you, I've still got it. Like, I think that was reassuring to him that he does still have it. And that's super, super encouraging as you kind of picture what is possible for this team this season.
Well, it's reassuring to everyone else too, because the Kids Day open practice, that was kind of, just dropped so much doubt into, can he be that guy that he was at Michigan? And like the first question is, can he stay healthy? He did that on Saturday. But the second is, what level can he play at? Like, is he going to be a guy that, had a good run at Michigan and then kind of was never able to come back from a couple of really devastating injuries? Or is he going to be a guy that can kind of revitalize his career and in the face of those major challenges, prove that he is still that guy? And he seems, he's a very confident guy, so he seems confident in his ability to do that. But we still need to see that on the field. And the fact that he looked like that guy from Michigan, he looked like the quarterback that Iowa wanted when they got him out of the portal. This is the first time that he's really looked like that guy, and last season was rocky for him. It didn't feel like he had that one performance. You're like, well, this is why Iowa got Cade McNamara. And the stakes of this game aren't still yet what I think to really make a stamp on that, like this is the Cade McNamara that this is a reason Iowa got him. But this was a real encouraging sign that he still has that in him to be able to be that player that Iowa needs.
We will get to your 3-word headlines. Got an awesome batch of them as we go here, but let's move into other topics besides Cade. And yeah, the Reese Vandersee story is the biggie for me because, how Iowa's needed somebody at receiver to throw to. Now, Luke Lachey clearly was that guy. He had 6 catches for 63 yards, I do believe. Luke did. So really nice comeback for him too. We didn't forget about him, but he ended up being the focus of my prediction column because I was like, yeah, like if the offense has trouble, they can lean into Luke Lachey, and that's exactly what happened. They kind of got going with Lachey, and then other stuff started to open up. Reese Vandersee, 5 catches for 66 yards and 2 touchdowns. That was the big one for me. He just looks like a player. The fact that he's done this when Iowa has lacked, basically anything at the receiver position for a couple of years, and just basically showed up in fall camp with an injury and then, scores 2 touchdowns in his first college game when he was a quarterback last year at Central Lyon High School, Northwest Iowa. This guy he just seems like he's a receiver. And man, talk about developing a nice development for this team. It's not like they were some of these weren't even manufactured touches. They were just a guy making plays. And that's what he said too, that I loved. And I feel like that's what Tim Lester's offense is more about than all that structure. It's like, just being an athlete and going to make plays. That's what Reese Vandersee said afterwards. And I feel like that's where a lot of today's big plays came from, Tyler. You think about the 31-yard pass to Jacob Gill. Cade McNamara said, that's not a play we've actually practiced like that. That was sort of him taking the route a different way and me finding him because he had to cut the route at a different angle. He usually runs it more skinny, like up the field, but this was more of a, he had to take a sharper angle to the end zone because of how close they were to the end zone. And, think about that. The jump ball-ish thing to Vandersee. There was just a lot of, I felt like, plays that were off script, so to speak, and even McNamara's scrambles. All that stuff. But yeah, the Vandersee thing is a huge development to me.
No, but I think that's good of Iowa being able to go off script because it just felt like under Brian Ferentz, things were maybe too rigid. There just wasn't enough flexibility. There wasn't enough of going off script. And the fact that Iowa can maybe improvise a little bit on offense and has the playmakers and confidence to do that, I think is a notable development. And then, on top of that, Jacob Gill, he a Northwestern transfer, at wide receiver and him making plays. And that was just a gorgeous throw by Cade McNamara into double coverage and just a really good play by Gill. But if you think about maybe in the spring, you think of, well, who are 2 of Iowa's top receivers going to be entering the season? You probably say Seth Anderson and Caleb Brown. And both of them weren't even available on Saturday, with Caleb Brown being suspended, Seth Anderson being injured. So the fact that you presumably have maybe 2 of your more talented guys who weren't even available, I think that on Saturday, I think that speaks to the depth of that room and the potential that it could possibly have moving forward. And I think that's part of what the importance of today is Iowa's offense was really good, but it makes you think how good maybe could they be, because it's not like Tim Lester has had the system in for months and years and decades. This was literally the first time that the training wheels were coming off of Iowa's offense against another opponent. And if this is what it looks like now, what can it look like, 6 weeks down the road, 8 weeks down the road? So I think it validates, some of the optimism around Tim Lester and just kind of maybe the expectations for what is possible for Iowa this season, particularly on offense.
Well, let's talk about Caleb Johnson then, because I felt like so he was suspended for the first half of the game. That was something that they didn't really talk about in the post game, but that's what happened. And for just a team violation, basically. And once he started playing in the second half. I don't know. Do you think it was a coincidence that the offense really started moving once he got in? But I mean, he just looks different out there, doesn't he? I mean, he ends up with 11 carries for 119 yards and 2 scores.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was a combination of Cade starting to really throw it, but I thought Caleb Johnson looked like the best running back Iowa had.
For sure.
I mean, Kamari Moulton,
19 for 65 for Kamari.
Yeah, and they really leaned heavy on him in the first half. And I think part of the thing with the offensive line is at first I was looking at it like, they're not really pushing their weight, but I think it was partially just because Illinois State was able to put so many guys in the box, and then when Cade starts throwing, that opens it up. So, but I think it validated that Caleb might be that guy for Iowa this season of that kind of getting a bulk of those carries and being that, he's off obviously to what you would expect and you would hope for him kind of having a breakout season.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to talk to him, but they did bring him to post game. What did he say about everything?
He was, I mean, you talk about Cade being upbeat. Caleb looked like he was living like it was the best day of his life. Like he was saying like, even just like, he was like, I'm just trying to be like more open with, media, like you guys, like understanding that you guys are just normal people. And I was like,
we're not normal.
No, I was like, we're kind of normal. Like, so, but no, he seemed like and just to have a role in the offense, to be part of it. And if I would definitely check it out if you have a chance, the video the video of him after the game, he just seemed like he was having the time of his life.
Well, yeah, good to know. We probably should we're 16 minutes in. We don't want to make these too long, so probably another 10 minutes or so. But we should talk about the defense, huh? I mean, they allowed 189 yards. Do I have that right? 7 sacks, 3 turnovers. Let me get the old paper out. I like
189.
189. Yeah, 189. Had 1 interception, which was Jamari Harris very early in the game.
Mm-hmm.
A couple forced fumbles, another one that didn't count off the Jay Higgins holding penalty.
And there was that bobbled punt that they somehow recovered. But
yeah, I don't know how they did. But, I mean, what a day for the defense. I mean, we talked, and we got to say, I mean, this is an FCS opponent. We realize that. Now, it's a pretty good one. It's not a great one. It's a pretty good one. And Iowa should win a game like this. They were favored by 22.5. But the way the defense played, I thought was super encouraging. I mean, there was just nothing out there for Illinois State. I mean, any little bit of momentum they got, it seemed like the next play would be snuffed out, Like, I just thought it was super encouraging. And they talked about turnovers during the game week here. A lot of them did. Needing to get more turnovers. They got 3 of them today. And Seth Wallace we haven't talked about the Seth Wallace factor yet. I wrote a column about that too. But you could tell Seth, as a defensive guy, is really determined. They've sent this message into the team. They've got to get more turnovers this year. And as we've said, if this offense is going to actually score points, that's going to make it a lot easier for this defense to have opportunities to create turnovers because other teams are going to take more chances.
What about Aaron Graves? I mean,
jeez, holy moly.
I mean, he's a guy that just has, almost every physical attribute you could want, just a monster. But he played like, the way, and I think he had 3 sacks alone in the first half, just a wrecking ball. And one of the questions for us, at least on the defensive side of the ball going into the season, was what the defensive line would look like, because you're losing Logan Lee, you're losing Joe Evans, and that was I guess you could call it the weakest part of the defense last season, even though it was pretty good, but it was just inconsistent. But the defensive line, I thought, looked really good. They were getting a major push up front. Y.A. Black, Brian Allen, that's a name that we've constantly kind of talked about, of potentially being a guy that really cracks the rotation. He had a good game. Max Llewellyn got some run, Jeremiah Pittman. So you feel good about what the defensive line did. Obviously, that's against the offensive line that they probably should dominate. But also TJ Hall getting the start at opposite of Jamari Harris. You know, that was kind of a storyline coming in. He did a good job. I thought the very first play of the game, Illinois State went right at him. But overall, it was what you would expect from Iowa's defense against an opponent like Illinois State. It was just pure domination, suffocation. They're there wasn't really much air at all for Illinois State to get any traction. We got you still on mute. We're still working through our week 1 challenge.
That was my Iowa offense first quarter.
There you go.
4 sacks, not 7. 7 were the tackles for loss. So I actually had that wrong in my column, so I just updated it while you were talking. So that's the beauty of live editing. Yeah, I mean, you could just go down the list. It seemed like, there wasn't really anybody on defense I thought had a bad game. I thought Kyler Fisher had a good game. I mean, Brian Allen gets a sack, and I believe, did he have the forced fumble? No. It was Caden Crawford had a fumble recovery, right? So,
and Castro forced that one. That was a great play by Castro on that first fumble. And actually, TJ Hall was the one that recovered it. So,
yeah, just a complete day. Drew Stevens perfect on kicks. Reese Dakin was not great. One of the questions after the game was like, "Wow, wasn't it great that your special teams?" I thought Reese Dakin was okay. The better Reese today was Reese Vanderzee.
No, but and that's good. Also, the thing is, there's so many storylines in this game. Like
there are.
We haven't even gotten to this, like really dived into the Seth Wallace part of things.
Let's talk about that quick before we do 3 headlines. Go ahead. What? Because I wrote a whole thing about it, so I want to know your perspective. How do you feel like he handled the day?
Seeing him talk after the game, it felt like he was head coach. Like it felt like the way that he handled the day, the way that he handled everything, that like it just seemed natural. It seemed like a really good fit. And I know Kirk Ferentz said earlier in the week, like, this isn't foreshadowing for anything, because one of the big questions in the somewhat near future is who's going to be Iowa's next coach when Kirk Ferentz is long and successful 10 years over. But it's easy to see, Seth Wallace fitting a glove. Now, that doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to be the pick or, there's not going to be other people entertained. But it just felt like, I can say on Saturday on this 2024 season opener, it just seemed like he fit that role very naturally, and he did a great job in it.
Kirk Ferentz does officially get the win. Was watching the game from home. I did confirm that. His suite was empty. Ferentz has a suite here where his wife and family, other family members, whoever, sit, completely empty today. So it was kind of symbolic, I feel like, of Kirk's absence. Maybe everybody was just at his house. But he had to be pretty proud. I felt like Seth Wallace really handled it well. It was funny. Cade McNamara had a really amusing quote about, once the offense got going, he was like really up in our ear and stuff during the change of possession, basically like, let's go, like keep it going. And you could kind of sense that. Seth is a fiery guy, and he probably wanted to, pour it on a little bit. And to walk in as an interim head coach, he had a few challenging moments early. He had to decide about a 4th down call. It didn't work, but he didn't regret it. He explained it. And another little small thing that Iowa did differently today with Seth in charge. And now he said this was a staff decision, but they deferred. They usually take the opening kick. They deferred, which I think for this particular team, Tyler, at least right now, I feel like that's the right play every time. I think you want to, because this offense you can see it can build. It kind of builds on itself. So to be able to start the second half with the ball, I really like that. And also put your defense on the field first, because that's your best unit.
Yeah, because it felt like Iowa's last offensive drive of the first half, you could kind of start to see it. And that's when Drew Stevens hit his second field goal of the day. But you could see the pieces start to come together. And then once they came out of halftime, it really started to get going. But, we briefly mentioned Drew Stevens. It was good to see him, finally be able to put some through the uprights, because just the difficult end of the season he had last year where, he was benched against Nebraska and then didn't get to kick even an extra point or field goal the last 2 games of the season because Iowa was shut out. But to see him, come and he was the difference in the first half. Iowa ultimately didn't really need those points because of what it did in the second half, but he was the difference maker in the first half for Iowa to go up into the break with a 6-0 lead.
All right. They're about to kick us out here, so let's do some 3-word headlines before we go. Megan Logan We're so back. Christopher Walsh, 492. He's nicely spaced that into 3 words. I like this one from K.E. Wells. Says, defense, comma, meet offense. That was pretty good, and that got a lot of likes. I noticed on the replies. How about here we go. Squirmin says the Lester effect. We'll see. It was funny. Saw him at halftime, like up in the press box here, and he like noticed me because he remembered me from our interview, and he was like, hey, and it was 6-0, and he was still fired up. The guy, you can't get that guy in a bad mood.
I mean, that's the energy he brings.
It is. A couple more here. I like this one from Brendan Schnabelen. Hopefully I pronounced it right. Reese Vander Z. It's one of the few names that actually is a 3-word headline. Alex Fishman says Caleb Johnson matters. We talked about Caleb. And then T. Allen, Minnesota. Afternoon delight. Yeah, they got it going after about noon today. They finally got the offense cracking.
Yeah. They did get – I don't know what to say after that. Yeah.
Wide receivers exist. That was another one. Here's a good one to finish on. Cody Hill says good as advertised. I thought the offense – I mean, couldn't have asked for much more from the offense as a big picture, 492 yards. I like this one to finish here from at Radio Hawkeye says improved by half. So I think what he's kind of getting at there is you improved in the second half. And also you doubled last year's yardage totals. Mm-hmm. They averaged 234 a game last year. This year, they're averaging 492, and they're averaging 40 points a game, Tyler.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like if you would tell an Iowa fan on Friday, like Iowa's going to win 40-0 and have nearly 500 yards of offense, you would take that every single day of the week and be really happy with it. And that's obviously what happened, and I think you can feel really good about it. Obviously, there's still it's game 1 against an FCS opponent, but if this is a starting point for Iowa, this is a good starting point.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at Iowa State's box score, so that's Iowa's next opponent. They win 21-3 over North Dakota, also an FCS team. If you're looking for positive signs for Iowa, North Dakota had 20 first downs to Iowa State's 18 and 174 rushing yards to Iowa State's 86. So an FCS team out rushing Iowa State, that's notable. Now Iowa State obviously gets the win. They have a really good defense overall, at least typically. So, I feel better about that game, honestly. I mean, when you see Cade McNamara, the way he's performing, you see a Reese Vanderzee, and you're going to get Caleb Brown back next week too. I mean, he's done with his community service today. Kirk's back tomorrow. Caleb Brown's back tomorrow. You'll have Caleb Johnson for the full game next week. I feel a lot more encouraged about that game. I haven't made, I'm not going to make my pick until midweek, but I picked Iowa State initially. I'm leaning towards Iowa right now. And
you look around the Big Ten, and Minnesota loses to North Carolina. Michigan State was in a tight one with Florida Atlantic. Wisconsin barely got by Western Michigan. So you look around the Big Ten and some of the opponents that I was going to play, and they didn't necessarily have kind of an easy first game. And Iowa, the first half obviously was a little bit rocky, but they look better against Illinois State than some of these other teams have looked in the first game of the season. So I think when you kind of compare it in that sense, Iowa's kind of outperforming so far.
Yeah, great podcast. Good work today, Tyler. We will be back with you Tuesday for press conferences. I'll have my DVR Monday on Labor Day for you guys. And enjoy your Sunday. Enjoy your holiday weekend. For Tyler Tachman, this is Chad Leistikow saying so long and enjoy the